we've now gotten through all of our array helpers, which were technically a part of ES 5.1, and now we're going to move on to some very ES6 specific bits of syntax and features. The first topic we're going to talk about is going to be const, let, and var, and how we use them to make variable declarations. Before we go too far into the specifics, we should have a quick discussion on the background behind some of these enhancements to JavaScript with ES6. So nearly all features in ES6 can be put into one of two buckets. The first bucket are features which are kind of syntactic sugar, or stuff to help you write less code. The second bucket are features which bring new ideas, constructs, or functionality to the language. And so we're going to be walking in or checking out features that fit into one of these two buckets. Many of these syntactic sugar features that we're going to talk about are probably going to seem pretty darn boring. Sometimes they're great, and sometimes they allow us to write dramatically less code, but for the most part, when we walk through those, you're going to say to yourself, how is this any different than what we are already writing in ES5? So let me be clear right now, these bits of syntactic sugar are not changing JavaScript just for the sake of changing it. Instead, when we use them, we do so to be a bit more expressive in the code we write, or to pass on some clarity to the engineer who has to read and work with our code in the future. So with that quick aside, let's get back to our discussion on const, let, and var, which are features that bring new functionality to JavaScript. So these would be features that are in that second bucket. So let's first discuss what this new concept with ES6 is, and we'll talk about exactly why the change was made. So in all the code we've written so far, we've been using the keyword var to declare variables. So we've seen stuff like var color equals red, and then we can reference color and we see, yep, sure enough, we got red. Absolutely no surprises. We've been doing this forever. So when we use ES6, we are no longer going to be using the keyword var to declare variables. So not once, not ever. We are not making use of var anymore. So from here on out, you're not going to see me making use of var anymore. I'm going to be using either const or let. So what are const and let? Const is a keyword that is used to declare variables where we expect the value that we are assigning to it to never change. Conversely, let is used to declare variables when we expect the value of the variable to change over time. So let's work through an example of this new syntax, and we'll discuss about why the change was made. So let's imagine for a second that we're building maybe a program to model an employee who's working at a company. So as an employee, we might expect them to have, maybe a name, a title, and an hourly wage. So let's declare a couple variables that would kind of match that. So maybe we got a name, title, and an hourly wage of 40 cents per hour. No, I'm kidding, dollars. So in ES5, I would have expected to declare all these variables using the var keyword. So now we're going to refactor this over to ES6. Whenever we're writing variables with ES6, we are going to now ask ourselves a question before we put down anything at all. We're going to ask ourselves the question, do I ever expect this value to need to be changed? Okay? Do I ever expect this variable to need to be changed at some point in the future? So let's look at the variables we've got here and let's ask ourselves, do we ever expect these to be changed? Any reasonable point of time? So for my name, my employee has a name and their name is just their name and their name is never likely to change. So I would say that because an employee's name will never change, I will use the const keyword to declare this variable. So say const name is Jane. And I think I've got a, oops. I'm going to comment out the ES5 stuff as we go through. So we've got const name of Jane. I specifically use const here instead of using the keyword let because I expect to not have to change the employee's name at any point in time. Like their name is their name, chances are they're never going to change it. Also note that I used const instead of var. So again, we're not using var anymore. We're going to use either const or let. So let's continue through the other properties on here. How about the employee's title? Do I ever expect that to change? Well, reasonably, yeah, I would expect that to change at some point in time. Maybe not in the lifespan of, a very short ran function, but again, we're kind of pretending here that this would be we're using these variables to describe a employee over a span of years. So I might use let title software engineer, And I'm using specifically let because I would expect the employee's title to change at some point in time when they get promoted. So maybe like sometime later, I would expect to see some line of code like title is senior software engineer. And notice that I do not have to use the let keyword again. So once I use let title to declare the variable, I can just reassign to title as freely as I wish. You can kind of imagine that let is a replacement for var. So var and let both produce variables that we can freely change over time. And this is in direct contrast with the const variable, where once we declare it, that's it. We can't make any changes to it. And our JavaScript will actually prevent you from making changes to it by throwing an error. So if I try to change the name to Janet or something, I get an error message saying assignment to variable or to constant variable. So we are trying to change a variable that was declared as a constant. So let's finish up our example here. How about the hourly wage? Would I ever expect their wage to change over time? The answer is yeah, I would expect maybe after some amount of time my employee would get a wage increase, and so I would probably use the let keyword to declare my hourly wage at 40, and then sometime later I'll increase my hourly wage to maybe 45. Okay, so we've spoken a little bit about const and let now. Join me in the next section, and we're going to discuss exactly why this change was made. So I'll see you in the next section.